The world was no longer the same. After the rapture, chaos gripped every corner of the earth. Governments fell, economies collapsed, and people wandered in confusion, trying to make sense of the unimaginable. Sarah was one of the millions left behind, but something within her had changed. The crushing realization that she had missed the rapture haunted her, yet she knew she still had a purpose. Her heart burned with a desire to make a difference, to help others, to survive, and most importantly, to live for Christ in a world that had forsaken him. In the days that followed, sickness spread like wildfire. Strange, inexplicable diseases ravaged the population, leaving bodies frail and helpless. Sarah found herself drawn to the suffering. She traveled from place to place, carrying what little supplies she had, caring for the sick and praying for them. Her hands worked tirelessly, bandaging wounds, feeding the hungry, and wiping away the tears of those in despair. She wasn't a doctor, but her prayers offered more comfort than any medicine could. Some recovered, while others succumbed to the plagues, but through it all, Sarah's faith remained unshaken. It wasn't long before whispers of even greater horrors reached Sarah's ears. People spoke of creatures, beasts from the sea, emerging from the depths and terrorizing the coastal towns. These weren't mere animals. They were monstrous, otherworldly. One night, while tending to a dying woman in a small Ghanaian village, Sarah heard a deep, guttural roar echoing from the shore. The villagers panicked, running into the forest to escape the unknown threat. Sarah grabbed her bag and followed them, her heart pounding with fear. As they fled into the forest, they heard the heavy footsteps of something large, something hunting them. The trees shook as the beast drew closer. Sarah led a small group of survivors, urging them to stay quiet and hide among the thick underbrush. The air was thick with tension, and the only sound was the erratic breathing of those huddled together. For hours they remained hidden, the creatures' roars reverberating through the trees. When morning came, they crept out, their bodies trembling but alive. That night marked the beginning of a new terror. The creatures from the sea began prowling the coastal cities, slaughtering anyone they found. Sarah continued to move, helping those she encountered. But everywhere she went, the fear of the beasts followed her. The sickness, the strange creatures, and the growing oppression from the Antichrist's forces left the world in tatters. Yet, Sarah remained determined. Her work was not without danger. One evening, while helping a group of survivors in the abandoned streets of Lagos, Sarah found herself face to face with one of the monstrous creatures. Its enormous body glistened with seawater, its glowing eyes locked onto her. Sarah froze, holding her breath as the beast sniffed the air, searching for its next victim. As it moved toward her, she whispered a prayer, gripping a makeshift spear in her trembling hands. Just as the creature lunged, an explosion in the distance distracted it, giving Sarah and her group a narrow window to escape. Despite the escalating horror, Sarah clung to her faith. She knew the world was crumbling around her, but she believed in the promises of Christ's return. There were moments when she wanted to give up, when the weight of the suffering was too much to bear. But she pressed on, fueled by the knowledge that she was called to be a light in the darkest of times. The days stretched into weeks, and the suffering deepened. Sarah, and the small group of survivors she had come to lead, continued their journey, moving from one place to another, always staying one step ahead of the beasts and the soldiers. The world was ruled by fear, and everywhere they went, they encountered the same horrific scenes: empty marketplaces, famine-ravaged towns, and the ever-looming presence of the Antichrist's army. His control over the world grew tighter with each passing day, and those who refused to take the mark of the beast were hunted relentlessly. One afternoon, Sarah stood at the edge of a small village in northern Nigeria, watching as soldiers, accompanied by towering robotic enforcers, patrolled the streets. The marketplace, once a bustling hub of activity, was now deserted. Food was scarce, and only those with the mark could buy or sell. Sarah's group, like many others, was forced to scavenge for food, but there was nothing left. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and the weakest among them began to succumb to the famine. One by one, people collapsed in the streets, too weak to move. Sarah tried to comfort them, offering her prayers and what little food they had left. But she could see the despair in their eyes. The digital billboards overhead displayed messages of compliance, urging people to take the mark and join the New World Order. Sarah clenched her fists, refusing to submit, knowing that to take the mark was to reject Christ forever. Desperation grew, and it wasn't long before the soldiers and robots began sweeping through the area, hunting down those who hadn't taken the mark. Sarah's group, like many others, was forced to scavenge for food, but there was nothing left. Hunger gnawed at their bellies, and the weakest among them began to succumb to the famine. One by one, people collapsed in the streets, too weak to move. Sarah tried to comfort them, offering her prayers and what little food they had left. But she could see the despair in their eyes. The world was on the brink of total destruction, but Sarah's faith remained unshaken, a beacon of light in the darkest of times.
Who will go for you, Lord? Please send me. Voices call for guidance, hearts are broken and lost. We can heal through service, bring them all to the cross. The lights are shining brightly in the darkness.